How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? All right. I know it's early, but it's time to wake you all up. Like they said, my name is Stephen Samuels. I am an instructor here at the Center for Black Studies, teaching African and African American history, and it's something that I love to do. I've been teaching for about 2.5 years now, almost 3 years, and like they said, it will be my last semester teaching for a while because I will be starting law school in August. But this semester, I've been teaching a course entitled Racism and American Culture. It's my third time teaching this specific class, and I love it. We have a lot of great discussions, especially when the classroom is diverse. We expose each other to thoughts, experiences that we may not ever have the opportunity to experience ourselves, hear, or learn about. But one of the things that we always do is, for the first week, I try not to bring race up. I try to get everybody adjusted and comfortable to my classroom, or like I like to call it, my laboratory. One of the things we like to do is get comfortable by learning who we are without race. Because race can be a very touchy topic. Can we all agree on that? It has become one of those taboos. One of the things that we don't want to talk about, where when we are exposed to it, we either shut down, we withdraw, or we practice something known as cognitive dissonance. But one of the things I always encourage my students to do is to get outside of your comfort zone. I always say some of the best learning and best growth happens when you're uncomfortable, when you're challenged, when you're outside of your comfort zone. So if you are felt uncomfortable or challenged by anything that I say today, that means you and I still have room for growth. Maybe something we should talk about. But I want to break it down, the difference between racism and prejudiceness, because sometimes we confuse the two. Specifically, racial prejudice, sometimes we think it's racism, but it's not. When you put power and practice behind the bigotry, that's when racism is practiced. Now, for example, with prejudiceness, that's when that person, hey, I don't like you because of this, that, and the third, or I don't like this group of people because my own personal opinion or reason. But that's very different from racism. Now, understand, when we talk about racism, it can be very, very challenging and confusing. But the difference is, with racism, you have the power. For example, myself may identify as an African American. Others may identify as an Asian American. Even the people whose land this originally was, they're called Native American. But then we have others that are called American, who are the American. That's power. Now understand, forward together forward, if we want to solve this problem or this issue, like they said, we have to do it together. But when it comes to prejudgment, that can mess up a lot of progress. Some of you may have some prejudgments on me, maybe because of the color of my skin, which I cannot change. Some may have a prejudgment because I have this hoodie on, which I can take it off. But still, sometimes I've been judged even when I have a suit on. Some of the most common ones are, hey, do you have a job interview today? Some others are, oh, I'm sorry, do you have a funeral to attend today? And I say, no, this is just what I chose to look good today. But that happens to me all the time. So understanding this, I wanted to share some of my experiences with you so you can understand just a little bit what it may be like as a black male in the United States of America. I learned a lot from my parents, and I inherited a lot from them, as well as my grandparents. First, I want to talk about my grandmother, Lily, who was biracial. She was born to a wealthy Jewish father and an African-American mother. Her father did not want the town to know that that was his daughter. So he would take care of her, even send her to school every day in a limousine, until one day the town found out that that was his daughter. He completely cut her off. And that's what brought her to Chicago. My other grandmother, who I learned a lot from as well, has roots in the South. If you talk to a lot of African Americans, they'll tell you, hey, we got family in the South, or I have some type of connection or root in the South. But she always told me how the racism was different from the South than in the North. And even Martin Luther King once stated that even compared to Montgomery, Alabama, the worst racism he had ever experienced was in Chicago, Illinois. It's because the wolf in the South will show you his teeth, but the wolf in the North will smile in your face, which can be a little more dangerous. But my grandmother always told me the stories, how she went through all these trials and tribulations, and how she wanted to make her life better for others. So my parents, of course, always taught me how to survive, how to make progress. And I remember when I got to that age, about 10 or 11, they gave me the talk, which for some, the talk may seem or be about many things. But for me, the talk was how to survive racial encounters and literally how my life could be on the line. So I wanted to share a couple experiences that I have gone through that some may have the privilege to never even believe that happens or have to encounter themselves. For example, I was about 12 or 13 years of age, a year or two from the talk, and I was riding my bike on my way to football practice. I was number 1. I had my jersey on because I won a lot of challenges to get that jersey to be number 1. And I'm riding through the street, and I jump on the sidewalk, and right when I jump on the sidewalk, I get to the next block, and you know, it's alleys in between the blocks. A police car comes zooming out the alley and hit my back tire and knocked me off my bike. It's a warm, hot summer day, so as I'm getting up off the ground to even realize what's going on, I felt something cold pressed against the back of my head. Next thing I know, I heard an officer say, "Freeze, or I will kill you." And remember, I'm just a 12-year-old kid riding his bike on his way to football practice. But he put that cold piece of metal to the back of my head and told me get on my knees and asked me where did I get my bike from. My bike was registered to me, so he checked it out and said, okay, today you're lucky, you can go. A few months passed, and the same officer, this day he was with someone else, had another officer with him. Another friend and I were riding our bikes on our way to the park to play football. And the officers was going the opposite direction of us, made a U-turn, put his lights on, and spoke over the intercom and said, pull over. So my friend and I, we pulled our bikes over. He was a year older than I was, so I was about 13, he was about 14. The officer got out the car, told his partner to stay there. Instantly, as he's walking towards us, told both of us, get off the bike. We both get off our bikes, and by the time he make it to us, he kicked both of our bikes over to the ground. Again, asking the question, where you get these bikes from? You all fit a description. Now, this day was a very impactful day for me because eventually the other officer would get out of his car and say, let's take him. I'm thinking I'm going to jail or whatever the case may be. But they handcuffed us together and put us in the back seat, drove us over to the next town, which was Cicero, Illinois, parked in the alley, made us sit on the gravel, handcuffed together with our backs against the car, as they repeatedly kicked and punched and beat us for approximately 30 minutes. And remember, I'm a 13-year-old child. But this went on, and then eventually I guess they got tired of assaulting us after kidnapping us, put us back in the car and drove around to a couple gang areas in Cicero and said, you know what, this is a good spot for them. They took us to an area that was known for gang violence, took us out the car, uncuffed us, and screamed to some potential gang members at the end of the block that, hey, here's something for you guys. And the Latino guys walked up to us and said, hey, what happened? You guys okay? Like, we saw the police do that. And they understood oppression. They understood what the police do. So eventually they said, you know what? We understand. Here's a route. Gave us some money and even told us how to get on a bus to make it back home. Now, to keep going further, it was another time when I made it to college, my freshman year. And throughout my life, I've had that experience where I've been the only black male or the only black student in the class, which carries some weight sometimes. You know, when you talk about certain things, slavery or something, everybody looks at you. Or when we talk about something with a sociological perspective pertaining to people of African descent, everybody looks to you. Or when you ask a question pertaining to race or your race, and you feel the weight that if I get this wrong, not only am I going to look bad, but this can impact how they view my entire race, or impact how they view black males from this day forward. That's a lot of weight, and some have the privilege to not even think about those type of things. One day, my freshman year was turned around. We had a communications class, and there was only one white student in the entire class. He lasted in that class for about 2 weeks before he exploded. We were talking about Barack Obama and John McCain, and he lost it to the point to where he jumped up, knocked his desk over, threw a chair, pushed the teacher out of the way, and charged at a girl in the class. I stood up, a couple other students, and said, you know, you're not going to attack this girl. But he was removed from the class permanently, as well as I was removed from the class permanently just for sticking up for her. Now, where I'm going with this is to understand that some people have privilege that they inherit. Some people inherit the contrary. So if we want to solve this equation of unity or unity and diversity, we must continuously talk, make progress, as well as foster and facilitate growth and healing. So I think about this end game, or the end of my equation, being unity, and I think about it. If I have all these whole numbers and I have an improper fraction, before I can solve the equation, I must turn the improper fraction into a whole number. And still in 2016, the African American community is still that improper fraction. And even abroad. It's not a coincidence that the darker skinned people around the world are always the lowest in society. So understanding this, if we want to move forward together, and solve this equation of unity, we must talk about it. You have to understand that other people may have experiences that you may never thought to believe to be possible or true. So when you're talking to somebody who's from a different background as you, please listen to them. You never know what healing process they may be going through, or the pain or weight they inherited and they carry at that very moment. So, once again, I want to leave you with 2 things to think about. The first is, do not close yourself off from other cultures. The world has become global, and we must respect and accept all cultures if we want to survive and meet our end game of unity. Also, help each other. Don't be selfish in your thinking. One thing we must understand, that just because someone look different, don't judge them by the outside layers. We all may have more in common than we may think. So understand that leaving this room today, or my message, please do not be afraid to talk about race, because it's something that must be discussed and solved if we want to have our end game conclusion of unity, or unity in diversity, to be possible. Racism is real. Prejudiceness is real. I challenge you all to look in the mirror and accurately and honestly critique yourself. Did anything I say today make you uncomfortable? Or does this discussion make you uncomfortable? If it does, that means you still have room for progress and room for growth. So, before I leave, I would just like to say thank you all for listening to me. I will be attending law school in August, and I hope that you all will continuously make progress when we're talking about race, help yourself, and help each other so that we can move together forward. Thank you.